Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the United Front Football Podcast. It is a football podcast with me and Mr. Breezy after the first Premier League weekend of the year. Oh, football's back. It never really left. We've had the Euros, we've had the Olympics, we've had all the friendlies. It's just not stopped.
We've had no time off.
Yeah. It's just never stopped.
It dates back to like Euro 2020. It's just football has not stopped since then.
It is, because that was the later year. That pushed everything back. Everything's been truncated. No wonder all these players are knackered and falling apart. But anyway, welcome back. We will start off, as we always do, with your hot takes. Every time we do a podcast, we ask for your hot takes of the weekend. Go and get on Twitter, get involved in that, chuck them there, and we will read them out and mock you as required. We'll start out with Keeney, a regular contributor to this section. And he says, welcome back, lads. I have a feeling Everton are already gearing up for a relegation scrap. They've got a championship level squad at best. If Southampton play like they did on Saturday, results will come and they'll be safe. Now, I did actually tweet out when I saw that Everton squad. I said, short of Pickford and maybe Tarkowski, that's a championship squad. Like, DCL we know can be good, but I think he's had one good season in the last 4 or 5. The others have been either misfiring or injured. And I kind of agree. The only thing is, they do have the best manager to take charge of championship level players in the Premier League and keep them in there. So we'll see how it goes. It might come down to if they get slapped by not FFP, whatever it's called, PSR things, finances, that fun stuff that everyone loves talking about. Yeah, whichever one it is. It might come down to that, but I mean, it's early days. They did get a paste in though, so I don't know. I don't know if you agree. What were your takes on that? I don't know if you caught the game.
Yeah, I didn't see the full game. I saw the highlights on like match day and stuff. Yeah, it was a very typical opening day thrashing for Everton. It feels like in recent years. Even when Dyche has been there, they tend to start the season quite slowly. And I'm with you. Like, yeah, that starting 11 did not leave a lot to be desired. And I think, like Keynes alluded to there, definitely feels like they're gearing up. Not even like intentionally gearing up for the championship, but like you think of Everton, and I think you just kind of assume, even though they're not very good, they've got like more than 2 players who are good enough to keep them in the division. So when you sort of see it laid out like that, it's like, oh no, they're really struggling. Obviously, they made a couple of signings in the summer. Like Jesper Lindstrom's coming on loan, like was really good when he was at Frankfurt. I don't think fared fairly that well at Napoli. And they got was it Ilman and Dai, who was at obviously Sheffield United the year they went up and stuff. So they've got players to come into the squads, and I think they can hope that that will sort of help make a difference from this season. But again, it was sort of same old story. Looked quite shoddy defensively and just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net, because as good as Brighton were, did leave themselves a bit open at times. And yeah, from what I saw the highlights, Calvert-Lewin had a couple of chances, and a few other players had a couple of chances to sort of keep them in the game, as it were. But
they should have,
like I said, very typical of
by all intents and purposes, like they had the best chances of that first half. Really, I think they hit the post twice, and there was a couple of like sitters that were missed, which, like you say, it's just a rinse and repeat of last season where they couldn't finish their chances. And Brighton are good. Like they took a couple of chances. Obviously, Everton get out of 10 men, and you're just swimming uphill there. So yeah, I kind of agree. But as I say, they've got Sean Dyche in charge, who did keep Burnley up with a championship squad for about 15 years. So like, they've got the best guy in charge for it. As far as the Southampton point as well, I don't know whether it's a bit of a false positive on that performance from them. Yeah, they probably should have won. Actually, they battered Newcastle, but they did have 10 men, opening day of the season. And the real telling thing is they still lost. Like obviously they went down to 10 men really early on. But they had like nearly 80% possession. They had like 5 times as many shots as Newcastle. Just missed all of their chances, and I think that might be the telling one. I think what's his name? The Diaz,
Baron Diaz,
yeah, Burton Diaz, yeah. Like he should have had a hat trick, like he just scuffed. And the thing is, like last season in the Prem, he was surprisingly effective. I think he got like 6 goals in 14 for a terrible Sheffield United side. So like I thought him coming in would give him a bit of danger up top, but like, I mean, if he keeps getting those chances, I dare say he'll finish more than he misses, but it's not the best first day of the season, is it?
No, well, it's on Southampton. We've actually had a Southampton fan coming up with a take, Mr. Cookie. Big Southampton fans, sort of following up what you said. So if Brereton, Diaz, Cameron Archer, or Adam Armstrong have a good goal scoring season, then Southampton are a goalkeeper away from staying up. I think alluding to not Paddy McCarthy, Alex McCarthy's horrendous bit of goal playing out from the back for Newcastle's goal. He said, "We look good against Newcastle, which couldn't score, but I feel with time we'll be able to get the goals needed." I think that's the thing, though. It's like there's not going to be many opportunities, especially away from home for Southampton against a team as good as Newcastle. You're not. I feel it's not very that often you're going to get that amount of chances, and it's quite telling they weren't able to convert the chances they did get. I've never, as effective as Diaz was for Sheffield United last season, I feel like just doing the basics right will make you look pretty good in that Sheffield United team last year.
It's a good point, actually.
I've never been that enamored with him. West Ham were linked with him like a couple of years ago when he was still at Blackburn. I remember looking sort of at his sort of like goals for Blackburn that year, and he just looked like one of those strikers who was just happened to be in the right places at the right time, which I know is like a good trait to have as a striker, but it never really sort of struck me as like this is a guy who can make the step up into the Premier League. Same with Adam Armstrong. He had that issue when Southampton brought him in originally, again from Blackburn, and then Cameron Archer, who's just a money laundering scheme at this point. I don't know if he's going to be able to score the goals necessary, especially when you think Diaz and Archer both for Sheffield United last year. Sheffield United didn't really score an awful lot of goals last year, so if I was a Southampton fan, that wouldn't fill me with loads of confidence. And I do think Newcastle were pretty poor overall, and the fact that Southampton still managed to lose that game, I think says more negatively about Southampton than it does than it does anything else, really. So I still think it's gonna be a really long season for Southampton unless they get a more consistent goal scorer in. Danny Ings is available, so feel free. But other than that,
literally flying that sell Danny Ings flag.
Yeah. Hey, he's got 3 goals in 2 years. Fuck it, he's a legend at your place, right? So
I wouldn't be surprised if you were actually just ringing directors of football going, have you heard of Danny Ings? Like, how did you get this number?
Young up and comer called Danny Ings, yeah. We'll do wonders for you, I promise.
But yeah, like you say, I think it might be a struggle for him. I mean, I don't know what happened with he's saying he needs a better keeper there. Don't know what happened with Bazunu. Like he was the flavour of the month for about 6 months until they realised he doesn't have any hands. But he was a big signing if I remember rightly. So I don't know. Maybe they need to just.
Yeah, I was going to say the James Trafford syndrome, like just a young, promising goalkeeper brought into a Premier League team as number one, just way too early in their career. I think it's sort of a good lesson in goalkeepers. You kind of need to have an experienced number one, and even if you're in your mid-20s, going out and getting loans in the Championship, in League One, whatever, for a few seasons before you're ready to make that step up is so important. Like even look at someone like Aaron Ramsdale, right? Like he was crap when he was in the Sheffield United team and the Bournemouth teams. Like when he first sort of broke through, it was only really until he got to Arsenal. Like he sort of that experience almost sort of made him a better goalkeeper in that regard. But I feel like when you're thrust into be number one, and you're coming as a fairly big money signing in the case of Bazunu and like Trafford, for example, there's more pressure on you. And I think a goalkeeper that age, it's just not really going to help more often than not.
Especially when you're playing at the bottom end of the table. Like there's a lot of things to be dealing with. On the one hand, it's like, yeah, you're getting a lot of experience because you're having to do a lot. But also it's like, you're going to be conceding a lot of goals, and it's really going to test your mentality. And to be fair, I think with goalkeepers, obviously technical ability is really important, but I think a lot of it is mentality with goalies. Like you've just kind of, when anything goes wrong, you've just got to delete it from your memory. And I think a lot of these young goalkeepers that come in look shaken after things go a bit wrong. So I don't know, I don't want to see the guy have a bad career or anything, but it's not worked out for him at all, really. We'll move on to Scott Chapman, again, another regular contributor. He says, I'll post this now before we, Leicester, play sitting in 11s is the best is it's going to get this season. I said that really well. Didn't trip over my own tongue at all. Is there any hope in hell we stay up, even after this presumably disappointing performance and first loss?
Well,
they were playing Spurs. We have just watched the Spurs game. Other than that, thoughts on the absolute weirdo mascara? Well, we'll move on to that a little bit after. But I think...
what a segue.
Yeah. Yeah, to be fair, I thought, obviously, Spurs had a ton of the ball tonight and, had a lot of opportunities to create chances. But I don't actually think, they created that many really good chances. It felt like Leicester were doing a good job at funneling them to the outside and then blocking those balls into the middle quite well. Obviously, Solanke had a couple of headers. And the goal was a nice goal. It was a well-worked goal, but it didn't feel like, considering how much of the ball that Spurs had, it never felt like a proper pasting. It had a very different feel to like those 1 or 2-0 Man City wins, where it's like it's almost like, you got your hand on the kid's head, holding them back. It's like, we're just gonna keep the ball, and you're gonna lose. Just it's fine. Just accept it. There was always that shakiness, and I called it out right at the start of the game. I said, Spurs they're leaving themselves way too open for a counter. They literally played like they were building up. Most teams will build up in a 2-3 or a 3-2 and like have a bit of a rest defense. They were playing with 2 centre backs and then maybe a screening midfielder. Like everyone else was like up in channels, like either in or just off the front line. And there was a couple of breakaways early on where just like Vardy couldn't get it under control, or it just kind of like bounced off someone. And I just thought, they're going to score, and unless Spurs take advantage of these opportunities, they're not going to win this. And it played out like that. Like it wasn't necessarily like straight from a counter attack opportunity, but that Leicester scored. But the one where Vardy could have won it definitely was.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of those breakaways, and it felt very, very one-paced. And I don't know if there'll be a more poignant image than Ange Postecoglou hunched over at the end of the game, looking like he's going to be sick. He looked like he'd just taken a brick to the plums in Sunderland. Like,
like Ange plays Football Manager, so I'm sure we can all relate. There's relatability there, right? It felt very much of the same from last season, really, for Tottenham. I was watching it, but like to give them credit, I actually thought first half, I thought they were really good, created a decent amount of chances. Like you say, they really should have been going in more than the 1 goal up. Like Solanke had a couple of good opportunities. Madison looked really dangerous. Madison's entire game was almost like a good summary of his season last year. Like really good in the first half, anonymous in the second.
Yeah.
But like, it's funny enough watching it. It reminded me when West Ham played Spurs at their place last year, and we won 2-1, and it was basically the exact same, except we ended up getting the second goal. Like they battered us for the first half, but then you come out and you just sort of. Leicester came out, to give them credit, thought they were excellent defensively. Like, fair enough, Spurs, what you say, were quite one-dimensional. I think once you sort of figure out what they're doing, it's quite easy to defend against. Because after a while, it feels like when Spurs are coming up against a team that are just sitting in and happy to defend in numbers, they just sort of default to going, let's just get out to the wings and try and get overloads. And it never really comes to anything, which is, not surprising when you've got Brennan Johnson on right wing, who I still don't like. I still don't.
£65 million Brennan Johnson, I think you'll find.
Yeah, I don't see any. I still don't see any real end products like from him. Like his ability to pick out a pass across the ball in those sort of situations is still just not there. And I think for where Spurs want to get to, I just don't think he's the guy to do it. In saying that, Kulusevski came on, didn't really offer much else. Neither did Werner. Like I say, just more of the same from Spurs last year when they come against teams who are happy to sit in the defend. But honestly, I feel fair play to Leicester because it looked like they were sort of really out of their depth in the first half. And I thought Cooper really did a good job of organising them in the second half and making them tough to beat. And they were really good on the counter-attack as well. And you think if that was Vardy 5 years ago, they probably win that game. Do you know what I mean? It's just you can't run anymore.
Even a Vardy that's not just like forced himself back from an injury that he got 2 weeks ago. Like, I think he only had a couple of preseason games, got an injury, and he shouldn't really have been playing today. No. Fair play to him, comes on, scores a goal, should have had a second, like, and it would have been even more hilarious if that had happened.
It would have been, yeah. So yeah, same old issues really for Spurs, which I think as good as the signing as Solanke is, like we spoke about it last podcast, right? And he did look good tonight. Like he was thinking play well and getting himself in good positions. It's just like you say, that style of play, you leave yourself so open and so vulnerable to being counter-attacked. Like you are just going to come up against these sort of problems in games, and then just got off. If you want to do well with Spurs and win something, like he said, second season I usually win something. Well, then you got to kind of figure out these problems because it can't be 2 years in a row of the same thing happening over and over again, right? So
yeah, and I do like same to you. I think Solanke had a it's the French pronunciation. He had I think they had a good game, like you say. He offered something that they just didn't have last year with Son. Like he's not as physical a presence, obviously. Richarlison's not as good, just like at finding space in the box. I just don't think he's quite as natural a striker, as shown by that last second header. Absolute Richarlison, fantastic. But one of the issues I thought was happening with Spurs was like you said, they were kind of just defaulting to getting it down the wings, but they weren't playing the balls that Solanke fed off last year, which was early whip crosses, balls into the box, getting into the 6-yard box, where he can be a bit of a menace. I remember, like, towards the end of the game, there was a period where I think 4 players ran at the same fullback, cut back, played it off to the same guy, who ran at the fullback, cut back, and like played it back. And the same thing happened 4 or 5 times. It's like, put the ball in the pissing box. You've got a giant bloke you've just spent 65 million quid on in there. At least give him a chance. Like, and they just weren't doing it. And it was like approaching 90th minute and they're just knocking it around and strolling about. It's like, what are you doing? It's like
it just feels like they run out of ideas after a while. Like, for a team that's so sort of fluid on the attack and stuff, it just feels like they just completely run out of ideas. But
yeah. When your creative solutions bring in Timo Werner off the bench, then you've not got the depth that you really need, have you?
They're in trouble. If that is the case, they are in trouble. Just on Scott's last point there, yeah, the mascara thing in the Wolves Arsenal game.
Well, both situations, like strangling someone on the ground and then goosing someone. Like,
yeah,
I mean,
it's weird.
it shouldn't be happening. Hopefully, it gets looked at. But I kind of appreciate his piss boiling antics. Like, maybe don't sexually assault people. But, you know, there's other things you can do on a football pitch to piss them off.
I did see Wolves fans being like, well, no, there's no context to the clip. Is Jesus blocking the free kick? It's like, oh, okay. You still shouldn't do that, though.
Yeah, you still shouldn't grope someone's arse. Like,
that's such a weird counterpoint. It's like, oh, he was blocking a free kick. Oh, fucking, run wild. No, it's like,
which way was the free kick going?
Yeah, and the Havertz one, like, he's looking at him as he falls over. He looks at him and then sticks his hand out. It's like quite clearly that's deliberate. I'm amazed Bar didn't get him, but I'm amazed he didn't pick up a yellow card, like a single yellow card in the entire game.
Yeah,
which is wild. But
yeah, it's keep an eye on him. He might be good for yellow card bets.
Yeah, or prison, but
yeah, one of the two. Yeah.
Oh, dear mate. Right. Moving on to another funny team from London. We'll talk about West Ham later. No, we're doing CFC. JJ has said Chelsea are a Cole Palmer injury away from a relegation battle. Yeah. João Felix confirmed to be coming in then tonight from what I saw. Conor Gallagher's obviously now off to Atletico Madrid.
The shorter players, aren't they? So.
Yeah, especially in attacking wide areas. Like, it's glad they're plugging that hole. No, we'll talk about the Chelsea City game a bit later on, obviously. But yeah, the Chelsea debacle just continues, and I thought they were largely unimpressive on the weekend, which was kind of to be expected. They kind of played exactly how I thought they were going to, which was just a lot of sort of build up from the back. They didn't really lead anywhere, and they had a couple of chances, but again, I didn't really think they were. It's going to be a story for their season.
Yeah, it kind of felt like I was describing earlier, like one of those games where City, without really playing that well, just were in control. Granted, Chelsea did have a couple of opportunities, and maybe if they had a clinical striker, they could have made it a bit of a closer game. But I don't even think Cole Palmer had a particularly great game. Like, he was okay. No. But I don't think many Chelsea players really covered themselves in glory. I thought there was a couple of okay performances. Like, I thought Lavia actually was really good. Like, shout out to him. I thought he had a really good game. Looked like that player that they missed in that single pivot last year. So yeah, he looks like he's worth the money, even if it's 12 months later. I thought Cucurella had a good kind of carried on his Euros exploits and had a pretty decent game, but everyone else was pretty average. Fernandes had his concrete boots on. Like, he just I don't know what's going on with that bloke. Like, it's very, very confusing. Yeah,
it might just be a case of I don't know. It's a weird one with Fernandes. It feels like in the entire time he's been at Chelsea, they've not really been able to figure out a position or like a midfield makeup that gets the best out of him. Because you've seen him playing that double pivot with Caicedo, it's not really worked. Don't really think it's worked well when he's played as the 10. And now with Felix coming in, who that's where I sort of associate Felix's main position is that sort of number 10 in behind the striker. Can't drop I mean, I say you can't. It's Chelsea. Anything happen, but I don't think you can really drop Lavia after that game. Caicedo was pretty poor and has been, up and down since he's gone to Chelsea. But they spent 150 million pounds on him. It feels like he's never going to get dropped. So it's like, again, it's that thing of like, and Fernandes costs 100 million, right? So it's like, can Chelsea even literally afford to drop these players, or is it a case of they just have to keep churning through managers, hoping that someone can actually figure it out how to get the best out of all these, fucking what's the word I'm looking for? Like luxury signings that they've made.
Yeah, I mean, looking for Chelsea, he's not on an 8-year deal and just been outed as a racist and been given the captain's armband, so I'm sure things will work out perfectly. Although,
Insanity.
that being said, I don't think they're going to get dragged into a relegation fight. As hilarious as that would be, they've just got too many players that are too good. They'll beat more teams than they're going to lose to.
Yeah.
I think City just weren't at top gear, but showed that they've just got the ability to finish a chance. Erling Haaland once again. Terrible first touch, terrible second touch, bags. Like,
Yeah,
he's just
it's a lovely goal. Like I have to say, it was a really, really nice. Like the finish was fantastic.
The finish was great. It looked like he was falling over the entire time, but somehow it just. He's a hilarious player.
Fantastic sense of balance. But yeah, no, I'm worried about Haaland this year. I think he's gonna. It's weird that last year felt like an off year for Haaland. He still scored like 40-odd goals across all comps.
It's the same
you know
with Salah. Like I've said the same thing about Salah the last couple of years. Like it's like, oh, it's felt like he's had an off year. It's like he's not really been at his best. He's not really done that. And it's like, yeah, you do know he's got like 25 league goals. It's like, yeah, but he's not been that good. He's not been Salah good, has he? Like
just regular good.
just regular play, just regular better than everyone else in the league. He's just not Salah better than everyone else in the league. Well, we'll move on. Kind of a couple of points that I think may kind of allude to the same thing. We had Rob McCulville saying Man United struggled to get a win while Liverpool had one of the greatest opening day performances in the Premier League history. And Jinx, via my Discord, kind of, I think everyone's on the same page with this, saying the obnoxious hypocrisy in commentary between Man United and Liverpool's equal performance levels was more than annoying. He says, in regards to excuses, stuff we mentioned on the day, like on the day, I brought up like that it didn't feel like Gary Neville wasted a single breath to stick the boot in on Man United when anything was wrong. Like just a bit of a missed press or a missed pass. It was like the worst thing that anyone had done ever. And then I watched the Liverpool game the day after, and it was just excuses. It's like, oh, well, they're obviously not up to speed. They're obviously not up to they've got a few new players. They've got a new manager. Well, they've got no new players, but they've got a new manager. Like, they're not up to speed. And it was kind of the same in the Man City game as well, the Man City-Chelsea game. It's like a lot of making excuses for teams that have been successful in the last few years. But it's almost made even more frustrating that it's Gary Neville. Like this guy that is a bit of is a Man United legend. He's been involved with the club on this new stadium design stuff. Yet still, I think, I don't know whether it's because he's trying to come across a bit more neutral to non-Man United fans, so therefore sticking the boot in on Man United. But like the commentator, I can't remember who was doing the commentary, but like just kind of went along with it, and it just kept turning into this 60 minutes of slagging Man United off. Then you score the winner, and then they were like, oh well, look, get away with that. But well, no, we can't. Like we played pretty well. Obviously, there was a few issues, but it was nowhere near the issues we've had recently. There's been better performances. I thought some of the players had really good games. I thought Mazraoui, for a guy that's just turned up 3 days ago, was outstanding. There was a lot more solidity in midfield, good creativity. It was just that Bruno didn't finish two or three chances. Yet it was stick the boot in on United, and no doubt TalkSport will run with it all week. So that was fun.
Yeah. I didn't get to watch I didn't watch the full game, but I've seen the highlights, and obviously highlights can be cut up to look a certain way. I get that, but like it seemed to me that like United had the large parts better of the game, and like I think Fulham had a couple of breakaways. Sure, that's just, especially the way United play, that's just going to happen. Like a team are going to have opportunities to counter attack against them. It's just the way it is. But it didn't. The impression I got looking through the reactions on socials and Discord and stuff, it felt to me like people were more just like, oh, they only won 1-0, so let's just use that to sort of like beat them with, rather than like they actually played badly. Like I've not really seen anyone bring up an obvious flaw in the way United played. It wasn't like last year against Wolves where they got battered for 90 minutes and generally did get lucky to win the game. It just felt like it felt like, judging off everyone else's reaction, just felt like quite an okay performance with some decent positives and a few negatives in there, which first game of the season, for quite a few clubs, quite usually how it goes. Do you know what I mean?
You bring up a really good point. Granted, we won against Wolves, but we were so lucky to get a result against Wolves at the start of last season. And let's not forget, Fulham battered us at Old Trafford last year. They ran us off the pitch. They just ran over us. So if you're comparing apples to apples, obviously they're missing Palhinha, but like I thought it was a much better performance. Obviously not perfect. The lack of having a Hoyland or a Xerxes from the start did show a little bit. I thought there was some really good pressing moves, some really good movement, but just not someone there in the final third to finish it off. We'll go into the actual game then. I thought that Mazraoui had a really good game. Like, I don't think he did anything that was like, oh my god, he's, the next coming of Cafu. But I think everything that he did was just really solid. Like, he covered well. He was in the right parts of the pitch. He shut things down. He was creative. He was tidy on the ball. He was good at playing balls into the box. He just looked like a proper player. Like, he looked like a really well-rounded fullback. And I hope he just stays fit, because I know obviously he's had a few injury issues. So if he can stay fit and like rotate or kind of split duties with Dallo, should we bring in another left back, or when Shaw or Malacia comes back, Malacia comes back from witness protection or wherever he is. Like,
about Malacia's existence. That's what I mentioned the other day. I was like, yeah.
He's just turned 20. I found out today he's just turned 26. He's just had his 26th birthday. Last game he played, he was 24. That's the last game he played. So yeah,
that's horrendous.
Poor bastard. Yeah, he's had a horrific time with injuries. But yeah, like there's a lot of talks that we might be bringing the left back. So depending who plays or where they play or whatever, like if we can manage his match load and keep him fit and keep him firing, I think he's going to be a massive signing. Casemiro is a weird one, because I've seen a load of people singing his praises about the game on Friday, and whilst he was effective in parts. And he played a really nice ball through that should have been a finish from Bruno. Like, he had a couple of headers. Like, he had some times where he defended quite well. But he also spent 90% of the game in number 10, completely voiding any space, like not filling any space in midfield. He was caught offside about 3 times from our DM. He missed about three shots. Like, and the amount of times that he wasn't where he was supposed to be is a bit wild. Like, so I tweeted, I was like, I can't believe some of the narrative I'm seeing on Twitter about Casemiro. It feels like he's having a stinker. And I think the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. I think he was effective in certain parts of the game, but wildly not where he should be for a lot of it. And I'm wondering whether it's got to be something that he's being told to do, is break forward a bit more. Because he is actually a lot better than I thought in tight spaces, finding through balls, like finding that killer pass. So I wonder whether he's being told to be the guy that breaks further forward a bit when he gets forward. Then he's also not quite as likely to go diving in 2-footed and get a red card, like as the last man in midfield. Maybe if it's a case of we bring in Ugarte, I don't know when that deal's getting done. I'm just pretty sure it is. Maybe he's going to be that guy that breaks forward and splits duties with Mainu a little bit, just to kind of manage his game time, manage Casemiro's game time. I think that could be best for all parties. But yeah, like I thought it was okay. Mason Mount, I thought, had a good game. He was really effective, if not a little bit overeager in the press. But I thought he linked things up quite well. He was everywhere where you wanted him to be at all times. Couldn't get the finish off when he had an opportunity. Didn't really find any creative passes, but he's never really been that guy. He's usually been the energy guy when he was playing well at Chelsea anyway. Like, he was just getting into space and like leading a press. And I thought he did a really good job at that. So positive for him. And I thought Xerxes, when he came on, like he showed what we were missing a bit. Just a bit of, I know he drops off a lot and plays in the spaces in between, but even then having a bit more of a physical presence, having a bit of a box presence, like in a similar way to Harry Kane plays. Like, he drops off a lot, but when the ball's in the box, well, when he was good for Spurs anyway, when the ball's in the box, he is a bit of a physical presence and he ties up defenders and stuff like that. And I thought it was a really good finish as well. Like, it looked like it was a bit of a fluked own goal, and it turns out it was just a really tidy finish from a pretty poor Garnacho cross, to be honest. But went in 1-0. Garnacho should have scored almost in added time.
He missed sitter, didn't he? Yeah.
Absolute sitter, yeah. People are trying to blame Marcus Rashford for that for some reason, just because it's Marcus Rashford. But yeah, like, it should have been 2-0. It was 1-0. I felt we were good for it. Bruno missed a few sitters. It could have very easily been 3 or 4, as much as it was 1-0. I don't think Fulham ever really like looked like scoring a load of goals. Shout out to Bernd Leno, by the way. Like, he just it feels like he might be one of the best goalkeepers in the league in terms of just keeping the ball out. He's got that kind of that Shea Given feel about him, where like he doesn't feel like a superstar, but he just somehow just keeps the ball out of the goal at all costs. His positioning's really good. He's got really good reflexes, and I think he's better than Aaron Ramsdale anyway. So
yeah, well, most goalkeepers are. No, I was going to say it feels like that's quite harsh, but no, yeah. People should know my thoughts on Ramsdale by now. He's just fine. No, I've said for a while. I think the Premier League is for the last few years, maybe not this year with like the promoted teams and stuff, but for the last like 5 years, feels like the Premier League across the board is pretty stacked with just good goalkeepers. Like it doesn't really feel like last year you had James Trafford who was down as just an out and out stinker of a goalkeeper, but like across the board. I think most clubs are pretty set in terms of just having a really solid number one, and I think Leno is certainly up there. He's in that same ballpark, I think, as like you know, him and Areola and maybe Pickford as well. Sort of like not quite the world class level, but like if he had to come in and do a job for one of the top teams, he'd do a job. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe not as good as the Allisons or whoever, but certainly more than good enough for most teams in the league. Just been and I only picked him up like 3 million as well. Like just really like it's proper bang for buck value, like good value for money they've got with Leno there.
I just find it hilarious Arsenal transfer business, and that they've sold the two of the best goalkeepers in the league for next to nothing. Didn't fancy him. We're gonna bring in Ramsdale, get rid of Leno. Turns out he's better. Gonna leave, let Emi Martinez leave for peanuts to Villa. Turns out he might be the best keeper in the world. Like, and then
he's annoyingly good.
He's definitely annoying. And then your two goalkeepers that you've got are fighting over who starts, and neither of them are that much better than each other. I actually think Raya's a pretty good goalkeeper, to be fair. But
no, I think based off last season. I think there'll be fair argument to make. I thought he was like, from what I saw of the Wolves Arsenal game, he was really good. Like, he made a really, really top save in that Arsenal Wolves game. I think at 1-0.
To
keep Arsenal ahead. Like really, really strong save.
No, he's solid keeper. He was very good for Brentford, obviously, when he was playing there as well. So yeah, fair play to him. But it's always just nice to stick the boot in Arsenal, isn't it?
Always.
Always. So yeah, I think it was like decent. Win the opening game, an all right performance. Hopefully we can grow on it. We have got Brighton next, who had a really good performance at the weekend. Could have gone the other way. It was against the weak Everton. Not just a weakened Everton side. Everton are weak.
Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes, yeah.
I was going to say, on the Gary Neville stuff, like I was obviously watched the games, I didn't see a lot of the stuff that he said, but I've seen like, you know, there's been clips and Sky Sports will tweet stuff out and he'll be able to quote of something that he said. And it's like, I think there's something to it, like you said, about whether he wants to he wants to appear as sort of like being non-biased. So by doing that, he sort of goes too far in the other direction.
Yeah.
Or it's just that because he's a fan, he just doesn't have any logic when watching the game. Because you know how it goes sometimes. You get blinkered by, like, usually the positives will seem way better than they actually are, and the negatives seem way worse than they actually are. It's like you said, the truth is usually somewhere in the middle. But it definitely does feel like, I don't know, because it's like I said, given how United have been at the start of seasons in the last couple of years, like Ten Hag's first year, they got battered off both Brighton and Brentford. Last year, got battered by Wolves and were lucky to get the win. This year just feels a lot more steady. Like not again, like we said earlier, not a top tier performance, but just a steady performance enough to get the 3 points. And like that's better to build on than what they've had in recent seasons. So I don't know. I don't see why Neville wouldn't be picking out the positives of that. But like I said, maybe he gets so much. I don't see his mentions on Twitter, so maybe he gets like he's just had enough of getting like dogs abuse every week from everyone across the country.
Maybe it might be
trying to appease people.
It is a bit of a trend though, I think, with ex-United, United players from the 90s and 90s who were super successful, because you've seen it like in the fan debate recently. You had Paul Scholes sticking the boot in all the new transfers, saying Dillit's not good enough. You always have Roy Keane sticking the boot in. Although fair play, like Roy Keane does praise when it's due. Like I
think Roy Keane's the fairer out of all of them. I think like
he's quite balanced. He's just really like miserable about it. It comes comes across a lot worse, but does actually praise people when it's due. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe it is just this still like that hangover of like, we should be better than this. Look how great we were. It's like, yeah, lads, that was like getting on for 30 years ago. Now. Like, it's a different Man United. Granted, yes, we should be aiming higher. But look at where we're coming from with what's happened with the Glazers in the last 10, 15 years. Like, you've got to build up from somewhere. So maybe it is just the case of, there's a little bit of that. It's a little bit of impoliticking. It's a little bit of, I don't know, like you say, maybe just kind of being a bit blinkered because you're expecting the worst, so seeing the worst. We'll see. We'll see how it goes along the season. But I do think Gary Neville does a lot of politicking. He does try to, like, he's got so many splinters in his arse. Like, he's such a fence sitter. He just tries to keep everyone happy, I think.
Yeah, I'd say if he wants to, maybe what would help in terms of like comparing it to United teams as a whole, stop fucking talking about them on the overlap every week.
Yeah.
It's like, I know there's like 3 extra United players on there or whatever, but it's just like, you talk about the glory days every single week. That's always going to be at the forefront of your mind.
Remember the good old days when we won everything.
It's just like
Jamie
Carragher gone life now.
Like, Carragher's just let there looking awkward. I won an FA Cup.
He did win a Champions League, to be fair.
Well, did he win it or did Milan lose it? I think the latter is more true. Well, I think that covers like the Man United first game of the season pretty well. Obviously, defeat for you guys against the very good Villa side. 2-1 was close. Could have been 2-2. There were chances in the game. I only really saw the highlights. I did kind of have half an eye on it, but obviously you were there, so take us through it.
Yeah, it's one of them. Like, I didn't really have much in the way of expectation going into the game for various reasons. First game of the new season under a new coach. Like, we've only just had a lot of our key players back from pre-season for like a week. Like Bowen and Paquetá obviously came back quite late due to Copa America and Euros involvement. And a lot of the new signings only joined like a week or so ago. I think Wan-Bissaka joined like 4 days before the game, right? So yeah, didn't really know what to expect. Didn't really go in with like I think we're going to win today, which is like I just want to see a good performance. I think we got that in spells, definitely not for the entire game. Full first half, obviously Villa going ahead 4 minutes in, they battered us for a good like 35 minutes that first half. But then we did slowly start growing into it, and obviously got the penalty, which like I've seen people like proper kick off over the decision and say like, oh, it's an awful decision, it's scandal, blah blah blah. But I'm just like, obviously people are going to say I'm being biased. I get that, but like having looked at it a good few times and look at the replays of it and stuff, I can see why the ref's given it. I can see why VAR's not overturned it. In the same way that if the ref hadn't given it, I would understand why VAR hadn't told him to go to the monitor. I think it's just one of those where it's like
it's going to be the same people that are complaining that VAR's re-reffing games as well. It's like, well, the ref's made a decision. Yeah. VAR goes, well, if that's what you saw, that's what you saw. And now everyone's kicking off. If it had gone if it had been the other way and VAR had overturned it, you'd have had similar people going, VAR's just changing decisions again. Like,
that's the thing. Like, it's one of them. Like, Cash may have got like a slight touch on the ball. Even when Manchester United did its like little circle zoom in on it, it still wasn't conclusive in my opinion anyway. And ultimately, Souček brings the ball down. Cash goes in and gets his legs tangled with him and brings him down. Like,
it looked to me like he just dived into his legs. To be honest, like he may have got a toe on it, but it doesn't negate the fact that you've absolutely cleaned someone out to maybe get a stud on the ball. So yeah, it's a foul. It was a penalty for me.
Yeah, so no real issue with that for me. Like I say, if it hadn't been given, I'd have been a little bit annoyed, but I could also see the argument for it not being given. But anyway, it was, and we scored it 1-1. And I thought second half we actually controlled a large part of the second half really, really well. There was some nice link-up play in the middle. Thought Kudus was looking really like he had Cash on toast for the majority of the second half. I think the disappointment. Oh, and I've got to give a special mention to Max Kilman and Mavropanos at the back as well, especially Kilman, who's coming for a little bit of stick over pre-season, I think just because we've spent £40 million on him and he's English and he came from Wolves. So I think a lot of the fan base is just like, oh, he can't be that good then, so let's just pick holes in every little part of his game. He was actually really good, I thought. Like really, really solid debut from him. I'm looking forward to seeing more. I think the disappointment for me, a lot of the old guard let themselves down. Like I thought Vladimir Coufal was terrible. Like it's a shame Wan-Bissaka didn't join a few days earlier, and it's a shame he picks up a knock in pre-season. Otherwise, I think he would have started. But Coufal really showed that I don't think he's got much of a long-term future at playing under Lopetegui. I thought Bowen was quite quiet and ineffective largely. Paquetá blew hot and cold. Rodriguez in possession looked really good in that sort of deeper sitting midfield role, but out of possession he kind of got his lack of pace kind of got exposed, and I think we won't really see the best of him until Edson Alvarez comes back. And Thomas Suchek just continues to divide opinion. Really, like looks like a threat from. He's a threat in both boxes. Like in terms of he's good defensively and can be a threat going forward. Just doesn't really offer an awful lot and build up in the middle of the park. And I think what Lopetegui wants in the future is just not going to be what Suchek's going to be able to offer.
He's your Scott McTominay.
Basically, yeah.
He's a useful, energetic, physical guy who, from set pieces especially, is a proper threat. But like, box crashing, getting on the end of crosses and things like that. But what he offers you in those limited times of a match isn't worth the negative effects he has on a game, because he doesn't really show for the ball. He can't deal with the ball in tight spaces. Can't pick obviously can complete a pass, but he doesn't offer too much in build-up play. And it's exactly the same thing with Scott McTominay. Like, he's to call him a luxury player isn't quite right in the term of luxury players. But when
I know what you mean.
When it's like such a specialist player that it is like, what's he good at? Like, is he any good at passing? Not really. Can he defend? Kinda. Like, is he good at build-up? No. What's he good at? He's really good at running into the box after the 90th minute.
Yeah,
he's really good at getting a winner against Leeds. Like,
So it's like if he's going to stick around, I've got no issue with him being that option coming off the bench. Like, if we're starting Fulkrug long term, and it's like, okay, to mix it up, we're going to bring Antonio on for a bit of energy up front, but we're going to bring Souček on as well so we can keep that sort of aerial threat. And I've got absolutely no issue with that. It's interesting we're looking at bringing in Carlos Soler from PSG, because that suggests to me that either him or Ward-Prowse could be out the door. So I can't see both of them sticking around if we're looking to bring another midfielder in. But I guess watch this space on that. But yeah, overall, like with anything, even people at the ground, not just online, like there's been a bit of an overreaction to the defeat. I thought we ran Villa pretty close, and a very good Villa side pretty close. And there was some decent signs of where we're going under Lopetegui. I just think there's a lot of moist stuff to coach out of some of those players. And again, even a lot of those players who I think that needs to happen to, I don't even think will be in the starting 11 in the next sort of couple of months, because I think they'll just be ousted by the new arrivals. So I don't think we've got anything to worry about. And speaking of the old guard, Antonio was awful. Does some of the Antonio stuff well, like holds the ball up, can spin a defender. His passing was absolutely abysmal. Killed about 3 or 4 really good attacking build-up opportunities and chances to create just by booting out for a throw-in when he could just play Jarrod Bowen in. A really disappointing display from Antonio, who you kind of want to see a reaction from, given that we just spent nearly 30 million quid on this international Champions League final playing striker. I'd be surprised if Fulkrug doesn't start the next game against Palace, to be honest, after that Antonio display.
I think a lot of the players that started off the bench will be coming in first time. And we were talking about it a little bit before we started. Like, it'll just take a bit of time for players to get used to the new system. Basically, going off like what I did watch of the game and like the highlights and reading into the stats and things like that, it felt like it didn't look like a Moyes performance. There was obviously still like bits there where it's like the initial thing is like, we've been doing this for so long, that's the initial thought. But if you just look at things like, you had way more of the possession than I think you ever had under Moyes, created more chances. It's not like you were sat deep getting shelled the entire game. It was a lot more to and fro. There was good chances. Like I said earlier, could have got a draw. Maybe that would have been a fair result. But early days, new players to come in, better quality players to come in. So yeah, I think from the outside looking in, for a first game against, as you say, a very tough side, a top 4 Champions League quality side that have just spent quite a lot of money improving their squad as well. You can't ask for much more than a goal within 4 minutes on your debut, can you, from your £60 million striker, midfielder, sorry. It was
really, really, really kind of Antonio just to not mark him.
Cheers, man.
to let him run off him. So, okay, cool. must have been an FPL or something. I should say as well, the players come off the bench. Somerville's going to be a really good player. I just don't know where the hell he fits in because a lot of people are clamoring for when Alvarez is back, I've seen a lot of people clamoring for Alvarez and Paqueta as a double pivot, and then Kudus in the 10. But for me, I just feel like we're just going to get completely overrun in midfield if we essentially play two tens. I just don't
Yeah.
see how that's going to work. I know he plays in like an 8 role for Brazil, but it's Brazil. Do you know what I mean? It's very, very different. And like all the difference between international football and club football as well.
I think it might just be a case of like having the right tool for the right job. Like,
Yeah,
maybe there'll be a game where, like, because Paqueta isn't as good at carrying the ball and running at defenses as Kudus, so maybe he's more suited to play when you're going to be playing on the counter a bit more. Maybe Paqueta is going to be better coming in when you need someone to, to play through balls and killer balls and balls in behind. Bowen and Kudus could swap places. You've got options in there, and in those games where you're playing against, relegation fodder, maybe you do play Paqueta in a double pivot, or have one guy sitting. Also, don't forget that you've got Wan-Bissaka, who's way better at sitting a bit deeper and being a bit more of a a ball winner to work against those counters. So I think it's just everyone always seems to get overly obsessed over who the starting 11 is, like forgetting that what you really need is 15 or 16 players who are all as good as each other, that offer slightly different things and bring slightly different things to the table. Man City are the best example of it, right? Like they've got basically 18 players who would all get into the majority of teams in the Premier League, who are all generally like top Premier League quality and could win a title. And it's just the job that you need to be done on that day gets put in. You saw at the weekend they had 2 flying wingers who were going to attack. There might be another week where they play Grealish and Silva out wide, who just hold the ball and build up a little bit slower and have runners through the middle. Like, it's different tools for different jobs, and you're just building a better squad, really. So
definitely, and I think Lopetegui's alluded to that in like some of the interviews I've seen of him, like this summer. Of like, I think he's basically said that himself. There's going to be different tools, different jobs, different plans for different opposition. Like, it's not going to be what we saw with Moyes and of just knowing exactly who's going to play and how we're going to play. I feel like this year, he'll have an idea of what his ideal starting 11 will be, but I think he'll definitely chop and change. And I think that's why he wants 2 players in every position, so he can adapt to whoever he's playing, which is great. It makes a massive difference just having options off the bench or in and around the squad that can come in and you can trust. And the last one I'll say is Tadibo only played for 30 minutes, but which I may be getting carried away. As good as Mavropanos was, in that 30 minutes, you can just see the level up. Do you know what I mean? Like,
he looked like a young Paulo Maldini.
Basically, yeah. But it's just little things that he did that's just like, oh, okay, yeah, you're going to be wicked. Like, so he's the one I'm really looking forward to seeing more of, Tadibo. Like, I think he's going to make such a difference to our defense, I think.
He was the one, when he was being linked to United, I thought, this is a great pickup. Like, if we can get it done for, obviously, not ridiculous money, like, was it 35 mil or 30 mil you're paying for him?
35 mil.
Something like that. Eventually. And I was a bit gutted when it didn't come off, because I've watched a fair bit of Nice since the Ineos like stuff, but I've seen bits of Nice in the past. They've obviously got like some really good young players, like, so I've watched a bit of their games, and he's always stood out as this guy looks like he could be like a proper, just a really high quality centre back, and he's still relatively young, can still get better, but he seems like suited to the Premier League. He's got that like, he's quick and physical. He's got that intensity that some centre backs just don't have, and seems to make like smart decisions good on the ball as well. So I think it's going to be a wicked signing for. I think him and Kilman is back too. Like you say, as good as Mavropanos is as another option, I think he's going to fit in really well. Having 3 first choice centre backs for 2 spots is never a bad thing, because you're always going to get injury and fatigue and
absolutely
suspensions, especially at centre back. So no, it's promising.
Yeah, no, I think you'll see the best of us second half of this season, but I'm just enjoying the ride for now. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, let's all get completely carried away after one game. Speaking of carried away after one game, I'm sure Chelsea fans are already. Lost 2-0 to Man City. In what I'm seeing is reported as Chelsea being dreadful, and we've already kind of touched on it. I thought there wasn't a load of really good performances, but I think the fact that they kept it fairly close for quite a while, whilst not playing that well, does show signs of there is something there. Now, everything else that's going on at the club is an absolute disaster. Obviously, we mentioned it earlier, Enzo's come back. Instead of having a disciplinary meeting, he's been handed a captain's armband. Like, he's stuck there forever. They've paid 125 million for him. They've got all these players that spent way too much money on. They've got 45 players at the club. They've got 7 goalkeepers, and they're all crap. Like, it's it's really it's an absolute disaster. Oh, you've got I think they might be Man United were Statement FC for the last couple of years. I think it might be Chelsea now.
Yeah,
Raheem Sterling doesn't make the squad, has to release a press statement. Very,
ridiculous.
very,
Absolutely ridiculous.
very questionable. I saw Gary Neville before the game tonight trying to defend it a little bit, which I didn't get at all. Again, politician Gary Neville. It feels like, why aren't you picking me? I'm going to kick up a fuss in the press 20 minutes before the game kicks off. Really immature. It wouldn't surprise me. I was talking about this actually like yesterday or like on Saturday or something. It wouldn't surprise me if Chelsea were actually looking to get rid of him anyway. It looks like they're trying to get rid of anyone who is a big earner. And he is, with Lukaku, the top earner. They've been signing loads of players, but they're all on relatively low wages for the Premier League.
Yeah.
Just on long terms, like to make up for it. So I wonder whether it is a case of they want to get rid. I don't know where they go, though. I don't know where all these players can go. It feels to me like top players, these players were earning £350,000 a week, who are all valued at like 80 to 100 million quid. Like Tony's probably asking for that money. Like you've got a load of teams who want to get rid of players. Speaking as a Man United fan, we've got Casemiro and Sancho who want to get off the bill, who are on that kind of money. There's only about 8 clubs in Europe that can actually afford to do that right now. There's probably a couple that could but won't. But I feel like you've got 3 or 4 teams in the Premier League. You've obviously got Bayern. You've got Real, but they've got no money because they're paying Mbappe 2 million quid a week at the minute. You've got Barcelona, who can't register the players they've already bought because they don't have any money. And PSG. I don't think any club in Italy's got the money to do it. Nope. Juve tried it, and it's just gone terribly wrong for them. It's completely decimated their squad after that Ronaldo signing. There's just not a lot going on. Unless you start seeing Newcastle trying to flex their financial muscle a little bit, like in the next few years. Obviously, like Liverpool could afford it, but they seem to have a really strict like wage cap, which is fair enough. Like, you can't really argue with that. Maybe just their self-imposed transfer ban's a little bit too much. And then like Chelsea, obviously, but they don't want to be spending that kind of money. Man United and Man City, but there's basically three of those teams won't sell to each other. City and Liverpool and Man United won't sell to each other. Like, it's just not going to happen. Arsenal seems to have a pretty tight rein on their finances as well. Like, so there's not enough clubs for all these players to go to, which makes me think like you might end up starting to see more players in their prime ending up in Saudi, just because people won't find a buyer for it, and they'll go, "That's £1 million a week," and it's no matter how much money you're earning right now, like it's if someone's offering to quadruple your wages, triple your wages, whatever line of work you're in, you're going to do it, especially when, as a footballer, like if you're 25, 26, you've got another 10 years tops in football. And then you think, well, if I take 2 or 3 years out in Saudi, keep myself kind of fit, earn a load of wedge, then I can just go play wherever I want. Like, I don't have to worry about money ever again, and my family will never have to worry about money ever again. So,
yeah,
it's an interesting one. It doesn't feel as, because obviously up until maybe 10, 15 years ago, it felt like there was a lot more European teams on a similar level. I mean, you could probably throw Atleti in there maybe because they still pay pretty big wages, but like there was a lot more Italian teams, a lot more Spanish teams, maybe even more German teams would be able to like keep up with them a little bit. But it feels like there's a smaller and smaller pool of clubs that all these players who want all the money can go to, and you've seen it this summer with Osimhen. Like he's stuck in Napoli because no one really wants to pay the money that they want. Napoli want to get rid of him because he's on too much money. And everyone's just in this kind of limbo.
Well, that's been the issue with Tony. Like because I know West Ham will link with him this summer. Like Man United, everyone's been linked with Ivan Tony this summer. And the numbers I've seen that he apparently wants is about 250 grand a week. Which, okay, given his goal record since he's been and performance level since he's been in the Premier League, maybe. But then you look at you could easily make the case of last season where you came back, you didn't play for however long, and you weren't that good when you came back last year. But with Sterling, like the Saudi stuff, I was reading about it as well. I was watching the game tonight. Apparently, he doesn't want to go to Saudi, like he's not interested. So it's like, well, if that's the decision, you're going to have to take a wage cut and go somewhere else. Like, I understand. I understand the point of like, oh, go and get paid in Saudi and all that stuff. But it's like he earns so much money already in the 2 or 3 years he's been at Chelsea. He was at City for a long time. He's 29 now. Like, it's fair to say the Chelsea move hasn't really worked out for him. If he was to take a wage cut and drop down to like 150, 180, maybe 200k a week tops, you could go to like a Newcastle, or go to like a club in Europe, like another club in Europe or something like that.
Well, he's been linked with Juve, I think,
Chelsea.
So
Yeah, so I'm sure, like, Chelsea, if it's just about getting the wage off the books, I'm sure they're not bothered about recouping a transfer fee for him. You'd think so anyway. I mean, it's Chelsea, so you never know. But for someone like Sterling, he's 29 now. Like I say, he's not got a lot of years left. Surely he just wants to play football. And if he backs himself, and Sterling does seem like a sort of player who wants to, obviously if he's not wanting to go to Saudi, he still wants to play at the top level. So, take a wage cut and go somewhere else. Like, I know everyone throws that thing of like, well, would you take a wage cut? It's like, well, no, but I'm not a footballer. So it's very different. And the Tony one, I know it's a little bit off topic, but yeah, the Tony one, I don't understand. For someone who's making so much noise about wanting to go play at the highest level and stuff, to now, from what it seems like, going to just waste his best years playing in a really non-competitive league just so he can earn the wages that he wants, just seems like it's just such a waste of the really good part of his career. Like I say, the peak years of his career, where he could have gone to a United on less wages, or an Arsenal or whoever, but challenged for stuff, and maybe like bring it for United, maybe help them get the Europa League in this season, or go to Arsenal, you play a big part in like the Champions League campaign or whatever. Like, I don't know, it just feels like a shame for someone of that quality, of that particular time in his career, to sort of piss up the wall by going Saudi. Like, for the sake of making a decent amount of money, I guess. But
my Saudi point wasn't necessarily about Raheem Sterling. Like, it was more more of a general point of like, there's going to be a lot of players who just, that's the only place they're going to be able to go to. If the market doesn't normalize a little bit. We kind of went off on a bit of a tangent there, didn't we? To the ramblings of my insane mind just came out.
Basically, City were meh and Chelsea were also meh. Just City are better when they're meh compared to most teams.
Yeah, like neither were particularly good. I don't think Chelsea, like going back to the point earlier, I think it was I can't remember who made the point. I'm leading back through CFC JJ, saying they're going to be in a relegation fight. There won't be in a relegation fight. There might not be fully in that top 8 fight that I predict is going to be really tough, but they could end up in it if they get their shit together a little bit. Really, I still think there needs to be so much business done by Chelsea in the next 10 days, next 10, 12 days.
Yeah,
that is going to shape entirely how their season goes. If they have a 35 senior person first team squad going into the 2nd of September, they're going to have an issue, because you're going to have like unrest in the dressing room because not everyone's playing, or they're going to be trying to rotate too much so that everyone's happy and playing 20 games a season and get no consistency. Like, the only time when Chelsea started to look at any good last year was when Poch started playing the same 11, 12, 13 players week after week after week.
Yep.
And it showed. Like, they started getting better results, started playing better. Things started going their way. It's obviously the transfers aren't down to the manager, but he's got to deal with it. So, he needs to hope that they can ship out, even if it's 15 players on loan, just go send them somewhere where they're going to play a load of football, then bring them back in a year, maybe sell them, maybe keep them, do your flipping business, whatever. Like, I mean, like flipping players, not.
No, I get what you mean. Flipping business. No,
get your flipping business sorted out. But it
was interesting. Sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say, like, I could see them if they've learned from last season and what they saw at the end of the season, and ship out 15 players on loan, sell a few players. I could see them getting into that top 8 because they have got good players. Enzo is an anomaly. I don't think he's a bad player. He looks like nobody knows what to do with him. I feel like he's got Paul Pogba energy to me, in that, like, he's a luxury 8/6. Someone wants to play in a bit of a deep free role, but they've already got they need 2 sitters there because they've spent 250 million on the other ones. So he's kind of forced into playing as a 10. Like, it just doesn't feel like it works. Again, if they were in Europe, it'd be perfect, because like they could just start to rotate players and basically, give Enzo, you'll play every Premier League game, as a 6.
Yeah.
You could say to Lavia, you're going to play every European game and every cup game as a 6, and then you just kind of switch him through, or like Casado or whatever. Like, but like not having that, the kind of shoehorning him into a system where they've got 3 players who want to play in the same part of the pitch. Granted, do slightly different things, but then you're missing out on things further up the pitch. It's just a mess. It's just a It's for person playing their first game of Football Manager kind of transfer business, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Is it so? Mentioned Europe actually. Chelsea are in the Conference League this year. But
obviously, Conference League, yeah.
Obviously you've got a lot of players there who I'm guessing didn't sign up to play in the Conference League, and so you may well run into that issue of just like, I'm fucking better than playing Servette, who they're playing in their first knockout round like this week. Like, do you know what I mean? Like that sort of stuff can happen. It's interesting listening to Neville and Carragher talk about it on Monday Night Football earlier. Like, Neville, probably both made some really good points in the sense of like they were talking about Sanchez, for example, like saying how he looked a bit, essentially looked quite nervous playing out from the back and looked terrified of making a mistake. And obviously, did make a mistake, which led to the second goal. But Neville's got a point. I think it's like it must be. Imagine the pressure knowing you've got 6 other goalkeepers. Like, it's just wait. If you make new mistakes, you've got not just one player who can take your spot. There's a choice of like 6, and it must be the same for most players in that squad. Like, I don't know. Like fully agree with all the fact you said, and like the fact they're bringing in Felix just so that they can give Atletico money so they can buy Gallagher is just, that's not a transfer strategy. Like, that's just, I don't know what it is. And yeah, I'll be amazed if Chelsea, like, I personally don't think Chelsea finish in the top 10. Not relegation battle, but I think they'll finish like 11th or 12th. Like, so I just don't see how they can get.
Easily see that happening. Yeah.
Yeah. I just don't see how I can get any consistency. And it's the fact that I can only go off what's happened in the past. They've had this issue for 3 seasons now. And it's like, Potter had issues with it. Lampard had issues with it. Poch had issues with it. Like, they've all sort of cited the same thing. Like, yeah, it's too many players to manage. And you got someone like Enzo Maresco who may well end up being a good coach in the future, like at that level. But give him a chance. Do you know what I mean? Like, if good experienced managers and Frank Lampard couldn't handle it, then what chances Enzo have? Yeah, it's gonna be. I think I can see it being a really, really long season for Chelsea. Just for that alone, I think.
Yeah, they needed to come into this transfer window and get rid of a load of players, and I've seen more incomings than outgoings. Like,
yeah, it's insane.
It's mental. But yeah, the hilarity of Chelsea Football Club will continue for the rest of the season. And I'm sure many a Chelsea fan will be releasing incredibly cringe videos and tweets as long as it goes. I did see Rory releasing a video where he was complaining about the history of Chelsea's being ignored. It's like, what, when you got bought by an oligarch and spent more money than everyone else and broke the transfer market. Is that the history that you're on about?
Yeah, I saw a clip actually the other day, and like I try to avoid it usually, but I was like, people wrote, so I'll give it a watch. And he's talking about like, to be honest, what was it? He said something like, if I was a fan of another club, I'd be really sad at what's happening at Chelsea because, like, it's in the same way of what happened to Leeds. It's like, well, first of all, it's not that's not comparable in the slightest. Like, you are not going to go bankrupt and get relegated down to League One.
Yeah.
Like, first of all, second of all, West Ham fan here never likes Chelsea. I think it's fucking hilarious. Like, that's rivalry. Like,
also, I mean, it is kind of like the Leeds situation because everyone hates Leeds and everyone thought it's hilarious.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like trying to garner sympathy because we've signed so many players, like bore off, like twat that bloke. Anyway,
but we'll move on to like a few wrap ups. I mean, we've already covered like the big wins for the big team. We've not actually talked about the Liverpool game. I thought they were fine. I thought Ipswich actually gave them a pretty good game, to be honest. Like, I thought they did
first half especially. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the quality just showed through second half. Once they started to get their Liverpool started to get their flow going, like they just looked a bit better than a newly promoted Ipswich who've got a lot of League One players. Colour me surprised. So yeah, I think like the teams that we expect to be at the top of the table, Arsenal, City, Liverpool, Man United, all got their victories. Are there any particular teams or performances or players that like have stood out for you, either in good or kind of bad situations? I've got a couple. Like I'll start off like with the Brentford Palace game. I thought Brentford were a lot better than I expected them to be. Not necessarily because I didn't think they were going to be as good as previous seasons. It feels like the seams have been coming apart for the last 12 months, 18 months for them. And to put in like a really solid performance against a Palace side that is a good side. Obviously, they've lost Elise. But I do like that Palace side. I like the way they finished the season, and I don't think they were particularly bad in that game. I just thought Brentford were pretty good. I've got Brentford to be down there in a relegation fight in a lot of my predictions. Based off that performance, if they can keep playing like that, they're not going to be top 10. But I don't think there'll be too much to worry about. I think the last few transfers that they do or don't get over the line, I think they're looking at O'Shea from Burnley and like a few other things in here and there. I think they'll probably be okay as long as they can have other players step up and replace what Tony is obviously going to leave with. And kind of on the flip side of that, Palace, again, I don't think they were terrible, but I expected a bit more, like from what I saw at the end of last season, like towards the middle and the end of last season. They just kind of were off pace a little bit. Few good bits of play here and there, but it didn't look like things were clicking. And maybe it's just a matter of time. And like, there's a load of players who are coming back late from. I mean, no one's had a proper preseason, so I think it is going to be a month or two until any teams really start to look like they're on, top game, firing all cylinders. But yeah, they were a little bit off the pace for me as an underperformance.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because they had a similar thing when Hodgson first came back. They were like electric for the final sort of 10, 12 games of the season and came back the following year and were toilet. So it's like it'd be interesting to see if history repeats itself in that regard for Palace. I don't think it will, because I think Glasner ultimately is a better coach than Roy Hodgson is.
Yeah.
But as someone whose team is playing them at Selhurst Park next week, it was good to see that they're vulnerable. Oh, this is how we can do them. Okay, good. And yeah, on Brentford, I completely agree. I thought they had a game plan and executed it perfectly. And I think, I had Brentford as going down, and admittedly, like I think I said this last week, I think it's out of hope that I just want Ipswich to stay up more than what I actually expect. I think it'd be a great story if Ipswich were to stay up. And I was like, well, I've got to pick someone. I do think Brentford, based off last year, I thought were more likely to be involved in that. However, that being said, you look at the starting 11, you forget how many injuries they had last year. Like Rico Henry was a massive miss for them. I think Aaron Hickey was as well. I think Ethan Pinnock missed a lot of last season. He was a really big defender for them. It's not just in terms of actual stature, but like in terms of his importance as well.
He's the captain, isn't he? So.
Yeah, so like they've got key players back. Obviously, losing Tony is going to be a blow, and the guy they signed to replace him is out until Christmas, which is not ideal. If they get like 40 odd million for Tony, that is money you can put straight back into getting another striker in, which they're going to need to do. And if Mbeumo can step up in the way that he did the weekend, Shadow, who again had injuries last year, looked promising. Just got Fabio Carvalho in, who's a really good option for them. So, like I say, if they can maintain that level of performance week in, week out and make themselves difficult to beat and good on the counter attack, like they were when they first came up, then they'll be absolutely fine. And look, Thomas Frank is a really good manager, and I wouldn't bet against him to pull that off. I think I think what last season shows is that it's so important that their players stay fit, and if they lose 2 or 3 really key components of that system, it does sort of fall apart a little bit. I don't even really include Ivan Toney at that. I think it's more about their defence. They lose sort of those key players in those defensive positions, then they're going to be in trouble. So as long as they can either keep them fit or get players in who can come in and replace them were injuries to happen, they should be fine in theory. But like you say, no one's having a lot of rest at the moment, so you wouldn't be surprised to see injuries crop up.
It did feel like they were missing like 2 or 3 defenders every week. Like it was proper patchwork. I mean, they've got a lot of defenders, but it was like did feel proper patchwork. And as a United fan, I know what that can do to a team, having a patchwork defense for an entire season.
Yeah, I think they might have had the most amount of like players missing games or something, or like most amount of days missed for injuries last year. I think it was more than anyone else. I think like Newcastle, United, and Brentford were the top 3. I think Brentford might have had the most. So I think that says a lot. And like I say, if they keep those players fit, they'll be fine. And speaking of players with injuries last year, I thought from what I saw of the Newcastle game, we touched on it earlier, I thought they were quite disappointing, to be honest. I've seen a lot of people have Newcastle finishing 4th again this year, just solely for the fact they're not in Europe. But like, I don't really think they've improved the squad at all that much in terms of incomings. Like, I can't really think of any notable transfers. I think we touched on this last week. Like, I know again, Tonali's gonna be back soon. That'll be like a new sign-in and all that sort of stuff. And Lewis Hall is going to play more this year. Livramento is probably going to play more this year because Trippier's Bruno's just been named the new captain, and Trippier's still
Yeah,
there. So he's had the captain taken off. Is that might mean Trippier could be off?
I think there has been rumours that Trippier's going to be leaving. If not, I think he's going to be playing like a support role because he's what, like 34, 35 now. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and he had a really ropey end to last season. He's still obviously a very good player, but I think if he sticks around, it's going to be on the understanding that he is going to be an older head. Like, you know, you're going to come in for certain games, like you're going to be a sub more often than not. Like, it'll have to be on that proviso, I think.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, I think Newcastle were underwhelming, and I think if they played most other clubs in the league, I think they would have lost at the weekend, or certainly not won. So yeah, I think Newcastle one to look out for. It might have been an off game for them. I'm still like a bit thingy about Eddie Howe's future, just because of the changes at ballroom level and the fact his two biggest supporters and the two people that gave him the job are no longer there. I think there's a lot more. You'd argue whereas last season I thought the idea of how getting sacked was really, really unlikely. I think you could definitely make more of a case this season that if they go on a bad run, he could be, he could bite the bullet and they look to get someone else in. And actually, just on Newcastle, it's actually I was thinking about this the other day because mainly because I've seen this happen in FM quite a few times. I've always been like, well, that never happened. You know, when it like you get far enough in the future, and sometimes like Newcastle, you will see that their owner like scales back all the funding and stuff.
Yeah,
I do wonder if they continue to be sort of hamstrung by the PSR FFP stuff, whether the owners do look at it and go, well, we can't do anything. We can't make Newcastle one of the best teams in Europe, what sort of thing. So what are we spending our money on? I do wonder what the long term, like 10, 15 years in the future is for Newcastle if they can't, get around all this PSR FFP stuff, because we've seen it's so difficult to break in. If regardless of how much money you have, it's so difficult to break in and stay in that sort of top 4, top 6 conversation.
Yeah, and it's not always just the amount of money that you can spend. Like, to be fair, from what I understand, they're investing a load of stuff into like training facilities and things in the background and putting the infrastructure in, which is fair enough. But they're gonna want that stuff's not gonna pay off for a long time. Like, look at Man City. Like, that's what they did when they first took them over, and you've only really just started seeing the youth product starting to come. Arguably, Phil Foden was the first youth product to come through from that system. So you're looking like at least a decade until that starts happening. And we've found out recently that Man City have been filling the books all the time, so that's why they've been able to get away with it. Allegedly. But no, I kind of agree with the transfer dealings. Obviously, it looks like maybe you've got Gahey coming in from Palace. That looks like it's in fairly like the late stages of getting the deal done. So that'll strengthen their defense at least. But like you say, yeah, Tonali's going to be like a new signing. Harvey Barnes missed most of last season as well. So those two coming in will help. But I agree, like there's not really any a lot of strengthening going on there for a team that needs improving still. I still think they need a better right winger than any of the options on there. I mean, I was going to, it could be any of the. I was going to say Almiron, but like Jacob Murphy seems to get as many game minutes as he does, and he's not top 4 Premier League quality. So yeah, it could be. I don't want to say a long season. I think that they will be in that pack of 3rd to 8th or 9th, with a lot of other teams in that situation. But we'll see how it goes. And I think you are right. Like, if they don't consistently be getting Champions League, if not at least Europa League, in the next few years, then maybe it might be a case of, how do we break into there? Because there's too many teams that want to be there. Like Villa have shown in the last couple of years that they are very good and can still push onto that. They're improving their squad. Man United obviously have got more revenue than anyone because of previous successes. So you'd think it'd be easier for them to improve the squad as long as the right people are making the right decisions, rather than doing ridiculous find the player who's available with the most Instagram followers or whatever the fuck they were doing before. The
Ed Woodward special.
Exactly, yeah. And then overpay for them, overpay them, and just completely screw up the squad dynamic. But then with a load of other teams as well, like I said, West Ham have been doing tons of really good business, and you guys have got the infrastructure in there to actually build funds that you can spend. Like, you've got, is it right? You've got the second highest match day revenue or something like, you've got like one of the highest match day revenues. You've got like the second highest weekly attendance and like all this kind of stuff. So it's, and recently been consistently getting to Europe and doing more. Like that'll only feed into bigger sponsorship deals and all that kind of stuff, which opens up PSR and you can spend more money, as Arsenal and Spurs somehow seem to find out. Like, I still don't know how Spurs are like the most revenue generating team in England, but no.
Like, what if it has stuff to do with the stadium, because they own the stadium, they have events outside of the football? Maybe that counts as towards their revenue. I'm not too sure.
I think the NFL throw billions at them as well. So
that's what. And obviously,
games there.
He was like, if you have like 50 Beyonce concerts or whatever, that's gonna do you no harm, is it? Let's face it. So they get Taylor Swift, we're all fucked.
I was gonna say one Taylor Swift gig and you can fly to the moon. Like.
Yeah. But yeah, West Ham will definitely be having the most revenue if they stick with the concession decisions they made in the summer. So we'll have to wait and see on that one. But yeah, no, like I said, I guess that's the thing. A lot of other clubs are sort of finding ways to get there without needing Saudi investment, and that's before other clubs look for Saudi investment. Do you know what I mean? Which I'm pretty sure most Premier League clubs will be doing. Not even like a full takeover, just like, fancy getting in on this.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of fan bases that have to do a quick about turn on their moral compass, who've been slagging off. I mean, me myself. I mean, I was completely honest when I said I'd fall out of love with Man United a lot if we were just owned by a state. But we'll see how it happens when it inevitably happens to Liverpool. So
it's good. I think it's going to happen to. I'll be shocked if it doesn't happen to like half of the Premier League within 5-8 years. Like half the Premier League clubs just owned or have some investment from Saudi or state funds. You know what I mean? Like it just feels like that's the way it's going, and there's not really anything anyone can do.
Unfortunately.
Which is great.
Yeah, right. Well,
exactly what you want.
Well, hopefully Newcastle can fail miserably, and City can get sent down to the Cheshire League with 115 charges, and then all these nation clubs can kind of, all these owners can go, this isn't really worth it. This isn't quite the investment we thought we were making in sports washing.
We can only hope. We can only hope.
Yeah. Well, on that note, I think we'll wrap up for this week. After just game week 1, there's still loads to go in the transfer window as well. Another 2 weeks of that. Another 10 days, 2 weeks or so. So I'm sure there'll be loads of more transfer dealings to discuss next week. But first weekend, I know you guys didn't win, but a promising performance. A 1-0 win where we didn't get battered by a team that battered us last year for us. And Chelsea are hilarious. So top lols all around. Guys, thank you so much for choosing in. Don't forget to like, thumbs up, 5-star, whatever you can do on whatever platform you're watching or listening to us on. And we'll catch you all next time. Take it easy.
Take it easy.